Welcome back to another episode of building the EMG-6. In this episode we're going to position and fit the lower keel tube onto the fuselage frame assembly. If you remember in our last video, we installed the upper keel tube and the keel splice tube. These tubes will be attached to the lower keel tube that we're going to install in this video. The lower keel tube is manufactured with excess length on either end. This is to allow for minor differences in keel positioning due to builder technique or even slight manufacturing variations. If we look at the SolidWorks model, we can see that by shortening the distance of the upper leg, we'll move the position of the lower leg up and down. And by shortening the distance of the lower leg, we will move the upper leg in and out in relationship to the frame. The goal in proper positioning is to fit the lower keel tube so that the upper leg and the upper keel are collinear. We will want to reference drawing 5340-00-01 for lower keel positioning. The best place to start is by removing the upper keel. You can install the lower keel with lots of overhang on the top. This will allow you to work on the lower leg and get it positioned correctly before you mark and cut the upper leg. Once you've marked the tube for its initial cut, add a bit of length to your first couple of cuts, and then cut off a little bit at a time until the tube fits perfectly. If you cut too much off the end of the bottom tube, it will look something like this. This was a mistake we made on one of the earlier prototypes by getting too aggressive on the cutting early on. It's not possible to correct the position by moving the tube because moving the tube on the upper saddle simply moves the keel up and down. To position the lower keel correctly, we would like to have no more than 1/8 of an inch space between the keel tube and the frame. With the lower leg of the keel cut to length and inserted, we're now ready to mark and cut the upper leg. Once again, refer to the keel positioning drawing. We would like the upper leg of the keel to be cut to fit exactly at the midpoint of the instrument panel pocket. Once again, mark and cut, leaving extra length at the cut point. We're now ready to reassemble and install the upper keel tube with the keel splice tube. Insert the lower keel into position and once again check the alignment. We are assuming that there's enough extra length that the alignment will not quite be proper, and so you're going to have to remove the lower keel and trim the tube once again. Then reinsert and trial fit. Do this as many times as necessary until you have perfect alignment. Once you're satisfied that the lower keel is perfectly positioned, we will now be ready to clamp and drill both of the attachment locations. We will start with the upper leg positioning and drilling. If you have a toe release mechanism, we will start by positioning it onto the upper keel and use it as a drilling guide. Drill through the top half of the lower keel tube and through the splice tube. At this point, do not drill through both sides of the tube if you're using this method for drilling the keel tube. Next, we'll remove the tow hook and clamp both the keel tubes to the instrument panel pocket, and then using a 3/16 drill bit, drill through the lower half of the keel tube and splice tube. You should now be able to push the drill bit up through both sides of the lower keel tube. The ideal situation would be to have both holes drilled perpendicular to the keel tube. If you do not have a tow hook to act as a guide for drilling, you'll start with the first hole on the underside and drill through the keel tube and the keel tube splice, and then remove the lower keel tube from the frame and insert it into a drill press with a V-block and drill all the way through the exact center of the keel tube. Next, we will align and clamp the lower leg of the keel in place, double checking the alignment of the upper keel. At this point, it is still possible to make a few minor adjustments in order to get the keel properly aligned. Refer to the keel positioning drawing for the proper bolt hole placement. Mark the position of the lower bolt Remove the lower keel from the aircraft, and then using once again a V-block and a drill press, drill through both sides of the lower keel tube. Reinsert the lower keel tube onto the aircraft and position the keel tube and clamp it to the fuselage frame. Now, using the pre-drilled tube as a guide, drill through the lower keel pocket with a 3/16 inch drill bit. We can now insert a bolt that's temporary and remove the clamp from the keel. We've now completed the installation of the lower keel assembly, and if we look at the center of the aircraft, we can see that we've got a properly aligned and centered keel assembly. We've now come to the end of another episode of building the EMG-6, and in this episode we installed the lower keel tube assembly. And in our next episode, we're going to be installing the nose skid tubes onto the fuselage frame. Remember that if you enjoy these videos, take the time to like us on the YouTube channel. And for more information about adventure aircraft and the EMG-6, please visit our website at www.electricmotorglider.com.